Hello, I'm Doran Ellen Beldotan in Svatin, Israel. President Trump is talking about moving over to the gold standard. Many of you are very enthusiastic about it. Although it is a step in the right direction, it is far from the most perfect expression of being on the gold standard, which is in fact living in the kingdom of David. This is the information which is the truth that will set you free. If you're wise enough to listen and take it to your heart, because only you can implement this. No one can do this for you. In this video, I am going to be speaking about very high religious matters, and at the same time with very commonplace, pedestrian, socio-economic matters. And that is necessarily how it must be, because those who cannot connect the highest heavens with the most basic reality of everyday living have not understood Torah principles correctly. And so we're going to be today connecting the highest heavens and our everyday pedestrian reality. And if you can do this, you will be free. First, let us speak about what gold is. One of the value of gold is 14 in Hebrew. The word is zahav. The most important and familiar substitute value for that value of 14 is the name David. Another one is yad, which means hand. And as people have pointed out very correctly, the hands in fact do have 14 phalanxes. Is that the correct plural? So 14 and 14 would be 28 together. And that is the gematria 28, which is koach, which is power, and also yihud, which is unity. I am giving you now the true power. One of the values, again going back to 14, which is David's name, which is zahav, which is gold, is ohev, he who loves, and ahov, he who is loved. And it is also the value of the word hagev, which means the body, or geva, which means her body. There are more substitution values for the name David, but for the time being, let's concentrate on these without going into the higher level values of the letters. This is enough for the time being. The word melech is translated as king, but it is just as correctly one who is a counselor. The word melech should remind you of milk, milch, the Milky Way. We're going to be speaking about the stars and the galaxies and pedestrian commerce here on Earth. And we're going to be connecting them. The word melech is equal to 570 in Hebrew. That is also the value of the word sha'ar, which means gate. The gate, not the gate, simply gate. The mem in the word melech is equal to 40, so obviously it would be 30, and 10, which is the word li, to me. And then the lamed in the kaf sofit in the word melech is lecha, to you. Rabbi Akiva taught that a very central principle throughout the Torah is sheli shelcha, sheli shalach. That which is mine is yours. We can hear from the name David, David. It is also the word dod, which means both uncle and one who's beloved. We hear the word deed, right? And that returns us to the fact that David is yad. David is hand. It's the deeds of your hands. This is the true gold standard. Now, when we look at the characteristics of materials and we describe those characteristics to ourselves, we should also be translating what we are hearing about those materials to moral principles. We're going to be looking at the moral principles behind the physical characteristics of gold, and we'll be looking more deeply into then what gold is. Before going into that, I would like to say it is incredibly important to understand that the creation is a moral fractal. Mendelbrot did wonderful work discovering the existence of fractals and working out the equations. Those equations seem to describe the same forms that exist on macro levels and on micro levels and are mirrored one within the other. That is not the way the fractal is. Quite the opposite. A moral fractal takes on different forms at different levels of morality. So the universe is, the creation is, the idea that arises in God's mind, and depending upon what moral level we are at, it will take on different forms. It is the same idea, but it takes on different shapes and different forms. Understanding that, we understand then that Hagev, which is the same thing as gold, which is the same thing as David, which is the same thing as that which loves, and that which is loved, takes on different forms in accordance with our moral level. Most people that you will meet, if you ask them what are the parameters and the limits of their body, they will say, well, you're looking at it. When they look into the rest of Earth, when they look into the rest of the solar system and then beyond, they do not recognize that they are still looking at themselves, because as we look further out, what we're actually doing is seeing ourselves in a morally more magnifying mirror. Yes? If you were to look in a mirror that minimizes you 10,000 times, you would not recognize yourself as you. If you were to look in a mirror that magnifies you 10,000 times, you would not recognize yourself as you. And yet that is you. So when we look at ourselves under a microscope, our attention tends to focus on what we see in that visual range. We forget about the fact that that actually belongs to a whole body. Well, it's exactly the same thing. What you are experiencing now as your body is only at a certain range of moral magnification. Making it larger will make it larger. Therefore, if you can develop the self-control that it would require to recognize your body at a higher moral magnification, you would then be able to control the movements of the planet, of the solar system, of the galaxy, of the galaxies, just as you do your limbs today. There is no difference between being able to move this body that you see and being able to move galaxies other than the level of self-control that we have attained. Alchemists tried to turn lead into gold, you know, and they did all these kinds of experiments and all kinds of meaningless activities. What they really should have been doing is upgrading their own morality. We have heard that gold is created in supernovae. What is a supernova? What is that? When you look at a supernova, you are looking at someone who came to that level of God consciousness. They are that level of enlightened. At that level of enlightenment, at that level of God consciousness, they create gold from their body. We will discuss the characteristics of gold, and you'll see how this lines up. When we think about physical realities, we should be translating them into morality. The lowest level of the lack of self-control is people who are easily moved to anger. Now, there is a difference between moral outrage and anger. I'm talking about the kind of person who gets ticked off easily. The Hebrew word for anger is ka'as. Kaf, ayin, samech. Ka'as. You pronounce that word chaos. Someone who is not able to control their anger creates chaos. They live in a state of chaos. They are not able to control their own emotions, as a result of which their body is not under their control, and most certainly not past the level of their body. Our power is always contained at the moral level that we have attained, so that we cannot do tremendous damage. So someone who has not yet gotten full control of this level of body, because they are not at the emotional level and at the moral level to do so, will be contained at this moral level, at this physical level as well. So the amount of damage that they can do is relatively contained. When we get to the moral level, the level at which we love enough to be able to use this body fully for good, and the only reason why you want to use your body is for good, we will find that our experience of what our body is begins to expand past the level of this body. And it'll take a while to learn how to control our more expanded limbs. When we were babies, it was hard for us to learn to walk. It was hard for us to learn to talk. When we were very young babies, it was very hard for us to learn to coordinate our two eyes and to be able to get an overlapping field of vision so as to see the third dimension. Well, as we grow in morality, we are still young at that level of morality. We are still babies at that level of morality. And then we become toddlers and adolescents and so forth and so on. Again, we have to learn how to see and walk and talk and move our bodies at that level of morality, just as the way we did when we were babies at this level of morality. Gold is characterized by being highly malleable, highly ductile. It transfers energy, power. Chashmal is energy, is power. Today we use it for the word electricity in modern Hebrew, but it's actually the power the current of power that flows through the creation. And most of all, it is incorruptible, and this is the reason why it is so valuable. It is not given easily to corruption. Why is it not given easily to corruption? It's not given easily to corruption because it was created in the body of someone who reached the level of being morally incorruptible. Listen to me now. Insofar as we are morally incorruptible, we are capable of producing gold. Gold becomes part of our body. It's gold in our hands. Our heart is a heart of gold. Our shoulders on which we shoulder responsibility are shoulders of gold. And when we get to that level, Hagev, the gold, Hazahav, David, that is being a denizen of the kingdom of David. Because at that level we love so much that what is mine is yours. And our bodies actually want to give, want to contribute. One of the substitution values of gold, Zahav, and David is also Zaz, that which moves. The body becomes, it is brought to the desire for movement by the desire to do good. And such a body of such a person morally becomes a body of gold, true gold, on the highest level of understanding what gold is. And that is to be a denizen of the kingdom of David. The kingdom of David is that realm in which everyone is characterized by the desire of love, to give, to do out of love, sovereign. That is true sovereignty. If we can get to the level, such a level, we are free because we have gone past the level on which those people who are restricted to this level of reality can touch. If someone has become so morally pure, has developed the self-control not to be moved to chaotic anger, but to be their driving impulse is that of love, there is nothing in the physical realm of those people who need technology that can bring them under control. They're free of that. They've moved beyond that. Neither do they need to be controlled, because their innermost impulse is love. And in the kingdom of David, yes, there is a hierarchy. Each is sovereign, yet there is a hierarchy. The hierarchy are those who love more. Okay? The highest level that we can reach in the kingdom of David is those who love the most. Obviously, this is very different than living under the guidance of those who are the most brutal, or the most ambitious, or the most avaricious, and so forth and so on. These are the driving impulses of those who love, who want to give. And to live in such a kingdom of li lecha, as to me, so to you, is freedom, which is described. Our only limitations are those limitations of our own hearts, how much we have learned to love. And this has to be a very, very conscious effort. Nobody is born at the highest level of knowing how to love. This is an undertaking like any other undertaking. Nobody is born with the physique of Mr. Universe. You know, if you want to look like that, you've got to work it. You've got to work it hard. Well, it's exactly the same thing with those who have reached the level where their bodies have become love itself. They are the very embodiment of love. That is the true gold standard. And that is the gold standard that I want you to get to. And this is why I say I can tell you what it is. I can tell you that it exists. I can tell you that there are beings who live there. I can tell you that you're invited. But only you can do the footwork to get there, to work on yourself, to do that, to transform yourself, to get the lead out of your butt that slows you down, to have that kind of alacrity, to have that kind of enthusiasm about acting in love, and transform the lead in your butt into the gold in your hands. Only you can do that. Clearly, the commerce that exists among those whose driving impetus is love, driving impetus is to give, is very, very different than living in a world in which we are still wage slaves, but now our salary is based on an external gold standard, a cold metal. It's not good enough to have a metal, a physical cold metal external to you that has the, my voice changed, did you hear it? It's a different teacher talking now. To have the, you're getting your money, but your money is standardized according to something external to you. It is not corruptible. The gold is not corruptible, but your boss is still corruptible. And so are you. To get onto the real gold standard is to work to become someone who is morally incorruptible. Morally, you are morally incorruptible. It's not an external standard that's been created in the body of someone who attained that level. You have attained that level. What we are experiencing as gold at the lowest level of commerce is our lowest level of perception of incorruptibility. An incorruptible moral person creates incorruptible matter. Listen to me now. We have been told that going to heaven is a spiritual existence that you leave your body at the time of your death, and you leave this veil of tears and thing of flesh, I don't know whatever it is, and you go to heaven spiritually. No, that's the biggest lie that you've been told by those who want to rob you. Going to heaven means to become the heavens, to reach that level where you're morally incorruptible, and therefore your body that houses you becomes incorruptible, eternally existing, eternally living moral matter. If someone is saying something kind and they have a feeling of love in their heart, the breath that they're breathing, the skin cells that they're shedding, the new blood cells that they are producing, the old blood cells that are dying, all of these are the physical expressions of what that person was experiencing morally. If it was at the highest level of moral incorruptibility, that material is incorruptible. The kingdom of heaven is not spiritual. It is living as a consciousness in matter that reflects our moral incorruptibility with physical incorruptibility in the purest possible forms, and given to the maximal giving and taking and sharing and enjoying and being together. This is the true gold standard. Those who live at that level, and I promise you, there are. You can hear I'm not making this up. Nobody can make this up. It exists, and you can have it. It is yours. There's an expression in Judaism, more than the calf wants to nurse, the cow wants to give milk. There's the milk again, the melech. More than you want this for yourself. We want this for you. But I cannot do the footwork for you. That is a lie that you've been told. No one can just like by grace go, oh, there you are, you're perfect. No, only you can do that. And in your exertions to do that, in your desire to do that, in your repeated failures to do that and trying it again and being stubborn and saying, yes, I will. There's an incredible video about a guy who tried to do some kind of a trick on a skateboard, and he couldn't do it. And he kept trying again and again. He hit himself on his back. God, what he went through to be able to do that trick, and finally, like, it hits him, and he goes, wait a second, I got it, and he does it. This is exactly the same thing that happens when somebody sets out on the road to becoming morally incorruptible, and then the housing of their moral incorruptibility becomes incorruptible matter. You're going to try and fail and try and fail. Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. 7 times a tzaddik falls and rises. 7 times a righteous person falls and rises. I'm telling you, you will fail. Try again and try again and try again. There is great merit in the trying again, and every time you do that, it's like a sword being tempered. Try it again, try it again, try it again, and finally you just get it. And you slice through all of the illusion and you just see. There is always failure associated with the attempt to get to the next highest moral level. That is necessarily so, because as I say, at the next highest level, we are quite literally reborn. And we have to start from day one at that level. And we have to learn how to coordinate our eyes all over again, and we have to learn how to walk all over again and talk all over again. And our body has expanded, our abilities have expanded, our members are more far-flung, and more incorporated and more complex and more comprehensive. And so until we get it, it takes a while. And then we get it. And then we succeed. And we have attained that measure of moral perfection at that level. It's not absolute moral perfection, it's moral perfection at that level. We got it. I did this, right? Then we move on. And again, the process begins again of being a newborn baby at that level. And this is the truth about what it is to be reborn. It's an ongoing process. It's an infinite process. And the casing, the housing that is holding this higher moral level is concomitantly greater. So you're no longer at the level of an atom, now you're at the level of a molecule, and then you're, and so forth and so on. And eventually, the entire universe will be our body, which is completely interactive with our will and is a perfect mirror of our will. And that is a physical experience. It's a physical experience. This is not a spiritual experience. I keep saying the same thing. If somebody is still talking in terms of spirituality, they have not gotten it. What they are telling you by talking about spirit as though it is greater than the body, I'm going to tell you the truth. They are dropping you the hint that they have not yet been able to control their anger. Anyone who has gotten to the level of being able to control their own anger no longer talks in terms of spirituality. They start to speak differently. They start to speak about moral achievements. This is the true gold standard. Those who interact in commerce, their pedestrian commerce is holy, because the emotions that move them, that drive them, that spur them on to action are love-based, not fear-based, and not need-based. Not need. They're not needy. They have a tremendous desire to give. They're not needy. It's not like, what can you do for me? It's, what can I do for you? May it be God's will that the gates of the kingdom of David, which are open to you always and are always welcoming you, receive you. That is up to you. You will not allow yourself to enter the kingdom of God until you feel that you are worthy. It's not that God is not coming toward you. It's not that God has turned his face away from you. It is you who in shame are turning your face from God. It is you turning away, not God. And that is actually the moral thing to do. If you know in your heart that you can't look God in the eye, then you look away. So it becomes our job then to peel away the layers of shame by becoming morally what we want to be. You don't have to be absolutely perfect to reach a level of not being driven by shame and fear and need and certainly not ambition and so forth and so on. That will come long before we reach the level of perfection. But get on that road. And when you do, you will be engaging in commerce that's based on love, not just on external gold that's incorruptible. You will be on the high road, the King's Road, to moral incorruptibility. Thank you, and God bless you for listening. And as God is my witness, I have told you the truth herein.